Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. Maybe not the happiest Saturday across the area. We, of course, are seeing a relatively gloomy start to the day, but just as expected, not a huge impact when it comes to the potential for freezing rain and a wintry mix up in the mountains and foothills. The winter weather advisory is in effect still until 1 p.m. from the National Weather Service, but the overall accumulation is pretty minimal. Brad was saying it the last few days. I was saying it last night. Best thing to do is just stay off the roads until everything has cleared out, which will be at about 10 o'clock for the most part in terms of precipitation ending. And then after that, we'll just watch for slick spots for the rest of the day, and then that freeze potential overnight. No snow really up in the mountains across the area this morning, which was as expected. Tomorrow morning, though, there will be an opportunity for some snow mixing in for the mountain areas in Boone, Jefferson, higher elevations there for Ashwaubenon and Avery County. So looking ahead to some nicer weather there. Of course, it's wet no matter where you are. So slick spots certainly on the roadways this morning. You can see live pictures from Monroe, Boone, Concord, and Dallas this morning. Now, there have been plenty of areas that we're seeing cold enough air at the upper levels of the atmosphere in order to see some of that cold rain switch over to icy precipitation. But it's just been too warm for most of the area for any of that to fall as true ice. In fact, even looking at our radar product, some of it has indicated that temperatures are cold enough for that to be falling, but it has just melted and become a cold rain for most of the area before it falls. So we pretty much have the light freezing rain potential now through about 9 a.m. for most of the foothills. Moderate travel impact so far this morning, but once we hit 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock afterwards, it's mostly going to just be that cold rain. Limited to no travel issues for the Charlotte Metro. Of course, it's drying out by this afternoon. And then we are going to be colder heading into the upcoming work week. So, I mentioned this last night and again mentioning again this morning on the scale of winter storms. This is extremely, extremely low impact. Now, the reason why we have seen some warmer temperatures at all levels of the atmosphere, making it really difficult for any freezing precipitation to fall, is that high pressure offshore. The clockwise rotation around it has wrapped in all of that southeasterly wind. Anytime that you see that, especially coming in off the Gulf Stream, you have warmer temps. Now, of course, I'm saying warm relative to the time of year, above 32 degrees. We're not talking 70s and 80s. But remember, you need essentially snow at every single, or 32 degrees at essentially every single level of the atmosphere in order for snow to fall. You can see that pink mixing in on our radar product, but notice it's pretty limited overall and mostly just a cold rain from most areas along and south of the I-40 corridor. Um, you never want to downplay an event because there's always going to be somebody who says, oh, well, I was really badly impacted. I had ice on my trees, things like that. But I just think that for most of the area, it is pretty low impact. So the best thing you can do is just try to stay off the roadways unless you absolutely have to. And if you are going to, just try to stay safe. And there will be a better chance for that freezing rain again along the north of I-40. So this is, of course, the current Doppler radar as of about 8:40 this morning. As we zoom in here, you can see that a little bit better. The reason why we're doing the stream now between the shows versus waiting until 10 o'clock, which is when I normally do our streams, is I wanted to kind of do the stream with you guys in the middle of the event versus when it's over, because what good does that do you if most of the rain has wrapped up? Of course, we've been on so far this morning on WCNC Charlotte and on our WCNC Charlotte Plus streaming app. So if you, for some reason, are having difficulty seeing us, you can still see us that way. As I mentioned, the winter weather advisory is still in effect through 1 o'clock. That's for Cleveland County, Lincoln, Catawba, Burke, Caldwell, Ashwaubenon, Avery, Alexander, Iredell, as well as Rowan counties. Again, this is mostly for the ice, but 10th of an inch at an absolute maximum, it looks like at this point. And that'll be especially for the eastern escarpment of the mountains and up toward the foothills. So that's pretty much the only spot that we're watching for more notable icing this morning. Yesterday, we were looking at the potential for 1/4 of an inch, but that has been really minimal this morning. I definitely think models have overperformed and the event itself underperformed, but hey, you gotta love that when it comes to freezing rain. I wouldn't be saying that if it was snow, but you always love to see less ice than more ice. This morning, again, most of that is starting to wrap up the freezing rain by about 9, 10 o'clock. Then the rain sticks around until about 11 or 12. And then after that, I mean, look how quickly we start to dry conditions out. By the afternoon, everything is pretty much clear by about 2 p.m. Here's the thing. Even though we see rain wrapping up by 2, it is still going to be chilly, cold, raw day. Highs will only reach the 40s. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily going to be nice. It's just going to be nicer. And then overnight, we will watch for the refreeze potential as there will be some spots dropping close to the freezing mark. That'll be mostly toward the mountains, though, where they actually will see another opportunity for some snow flurries. This one is the best chance for snow. This morning, that was kind of the thing that we were trying to communicate yesterday, is that this morning, even in the mountains, it was mostly ice. The same for the foothills. But tonight, the areas in the mountains could certainly see some snow. So nice to see that there for tomorrow morning. But tomorrow afternoon, for all of Piedmont, we are nice and dry. So gotta love that too. Of course, with the Panthers at home, that will be nice for the game there. Although it will be a little bit breezy. We'll get to that in just a second. So here's that breakdown of the timeline. Again, most areas up in the mountains, we'll see the freezing rain potential wrap up by about 10, a little bit earlier by about 9:30 for areas in the foothills. And then you can see we pretty much are all just a cold rain for Gastonia, Charlotte, Monroe, and Rock Hill. That wrapping up completely by the early half of the afternoon. So the winter timeline was probably a little bit more impactful this morning as we were still watching that small chance for some freezing rain. I love showing this precipitation type map just because people give us a lot of questions about, why don't we see snow? What's the difference between sleet and freezing rain and all that good stuff? So essentially, you have the two extremes. On the left portion, you have rain, and on the right, you have snow. So essentially, most precipitation falls from the cloud as snow because the temperature is mostly below 32 degrees. So if you have cold air at every single layer, in a nutshell, in the simplest meteorological terms, you'll have snow. Whereas for rain, it falls as snow, but then melts in simplest terms. If it stays warm, you'll just have rain. However, with both sleet and freezing rain, you have this warm layer, but then a potential for a refreeze. Now, with sleet, the warm layer is really, really thin. So I had a weather promo and I was like, oh my gosh, it's me. So with the sleet, the warm layer is really, really thin. So essentially it melts and becomes rain, but then has plenty of time to refreeze. And that's why you get those bouncy little ice pellets that kind of just look like you took like on a hot summer day and like a cup of ice and threw them on the ground. They're not as impactful. They're just more annoying because freezing rain, the reason why it's more so impactful is because you have a really dense layer of warm air. And then it's just that shallow freezing potential right before it reaches the ground. So what happens is a lot of the freezing rain causes a freeze initially on contact with especially surface like bridges and overpasses, decks, patios, things like that, which cause people to slip. Not just people, your car too. Black ice is essentially transparent ice that you can't see because it's on the ground, and what's called black ice because most of the ground is black or dark gray, things like that, which is why it's called that. And so essentially you have a higher chance of hydroplaning. I think the key when it comes to winter precipitation, at least for most of the Carolinas, now if you're from Colorado, the New England states, different story, but in the Carolinas, at least, especially when it comes to an ice impact, the key is just giving yourself plenty of time and plenty of space in the car in front of you. And if you know that there's an ice chance, trying to drive in a car that's all-wheel drive, I think is a little bit more beneficial too. So here's the updated ice accumulation map you can see for this morning. I did take out all the dark pink shading, so we just have that kind of medium shade pink. So again, about 1/10 of an inch at a maximum. You normally need closer to a quarter to see widespread power outage risk, so we're not really expecting that. But a few isolated power outages not out of the question, but it's probably more likely related to ice if it's in the mountains and foothills. If you have any of those issues in the Piedmont, it's most likely not related to the ice itself. I'm not saying it's not weather related, just not related to any kind of ice because we're not expecting power line ice accumulation anywhere in the Charlotte metro area. So this morning, it's been pretty much raining all morning since like 2 a.m. It will rain till about 1, 2 o'clock, and then we're pretty much clear Sunday, Monday. But then all eyes are turning to our next storm system, which arrives on Tuesday. It is very common with nor'easter winter setups to see this more active storm track, which we've talked a lot about over the last few weeks. You're probably sick of us talking about it. But with that more active storm track comes different types of storm systems. This one, again, was more of a winter storm, kind of, just because it really only impacted with winter precipitation in the mountains and foothills. But the one coming on Tuesday has really strong signs that we could see not only gusty winds and heavy rain, but also the potential for flooding, bringing in the potential for severe weather. As we zoom out here, you can kind of see futurecast with the timing. This comes in smack dab in the middle of the day on Tuesday, and then right on cue with that kind of normal trend of seeing storm systems every 2 to 3 days, we could see another storm system entering the forecast heading into the day on Friday. So this is certainly something we're going to be watching. Now, the biggest impact here when it comes to Tuesday storms is going to be initially likely the winds and then secondarily their heavy rain that could lead to some flooding. And with the winds, they're going to be really packing a punch. We could actually see wind gusts in the 40s and even 50s for areas east of I-77, which are really, really strong wind gusts to see with the storm system this time of year. And when you see strong indications of this so many days out, that's one of the reasons why we've been talking about it for a few days now already, even though we are still 4 days out from this event. Brad and I have been looking at that. We were looking at it together actually on Thursday in the Weather Center. And then I was in here last night, and we've been consistently kind of seeing this trend of those gusty winds. Now, what I noticed this morning was that most model data has this continuing and kind of keeping us gusty and windy even into the day on Wednesday, although they're not quite as strong. And I think this could certainly have an impact when it comes to the heavy rain that we'll see late Tuesday and the isolated flooding risk. Any kind of time you have additional weather impacts when you're already tracking multiple other things, it can cause some additional problems. So these are 2 days we are really, really going to be watching for, again, the storms and the heavy rain, the gusty winds Tuesday, and potentially some of that lingering with some flooding risk heading into Wednesday too. So just keep a close eye on it, folks. We're going to be watching this very, very closely over the next few days. Timing, intensity, probably all those things will change a tiny bit, that they typically do, maybe come in a little bit later, a little bit earlier, but we'll keep a close eye. So for now, still watching that wintry mix north of I-40 till about 9:30, and or I guess 9:30 for the foothills, closer to 10 for areas in the mountains. And then after that, we are starting to clear out. Still cloudy though, with temperatures only in the 40s. Overnight, we do drop into the upper 30s. We stay breezy into the afternoon, highs in the 50s. The Panthers are at home. Fingers crossed for a big win. And then all eyes, like I mentioned, are ahead to that opportunity for heavy rain, gusty winds with our next chance for storms heading into Tuesday. And you can just tell that it's going to be a chance for storms based on the fact that the high temperature is in the 60s, about 10 degrees above average. Then the next chance for rain looks to come in later Friday and could linger into Saturday morning. But again, still a lot of time to watch it. Just know that the pattern of kind of every 2 to 3 days of seeing storms or at least some kind of rainfall system are going to continue. But for now, I'm going to leave you with a wet start to the day. Most of this wintry mix, if any is still lingering in your area, is going to likely wrap up over the next hour to hour and 15 minutes. And then after that, mostly just a cold rain. Be safe if you have to head out on the roadways, especially for areas north of I-40. Again, still a relatively low impact event, but we just want to give you a heads up on that. Make sure you're staying safe out there. And other than that, I hope you have a great Saturday. Stay warm, bundle up with those temperatures only in the 40s, and everyone will be feeling much, much better with those temps in the 50s and sunshine by tomorrow afternoon. Have a great rest of your Saturday, everybody. And if you want more on the forecast, you just kind of want to hang out with Kaylin and myself, we'll see you on WCNC Charlotte at 9 o'clock in just about 10 minutes.